Maggie Rizer was one of the most sought-after supermodels of her time, gracing Vogue covers, walking for the biggest designers, and earning millions before most people finished college. But in the blink of an eye, everything was lost. Her bank accounts emptied, her career stalled, and the glamorous world that once adored her suddenly moved on. Maggie walked away, but not on her own terms. Her story is one of betrayal, heartbreak, and the steep cost of trust. What really happened to Maggie Rizer's fortune? Join us as we unravel the truth behind her devastating fall. The famous supermodel Maggie Rizer was raised in a small town called Watertown, found in northern New York. Her early life was shaped by things many small-town teenagers experienced. There were field hockey games after school, long evenings around bonfires with friends, and band rehearsals that filled her afternoons. She played the baritone horn in the school's marching band and kept herself busy with activities that brought people together. At home, things changed early in her life. Her parents separated when she and her older sister were still very young. Not long after, her father came out as gay, which added another layer to their family's story. Over time, her mother remarried, and soon their home was filled with more siblings. A younger brother and two younger sisters joined the family. Though they didn't have much money, the children made do with what they had. They made the most out of the small things, and life moved forward. Eventually, her father passed away from AIDS, but even this loss somehow became a part of the world around her, as if people had learned how to live with sorrow without breaking down. Maggie continued to grow up and held on to the idea of having a normal American life. She imagined her future filled with college days, long weekends with friends, and parties that stretched late into the night. She pictured herself sleeping in, picking easy class schedules, and heading off on road trips. But her life turned out very differently. It all started with a single photograph. Her high school graduation photo was displayed in a local photography studio called Burns Photography, and even ended up in the local shopping mall. People who walked past the photo took notice. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers started bringing up modeling. They told her mother to send the photo to agencies in New York.
And a lot of people we knew would look at her graduation picture and say to us, "Oh, you should send her picture into a modeling agency."
After hearing these suggestions again and again, her mother finally sent Maggie's pictures to Ford Modeling Agency. Her features stood out from the rest. Pale skin, filled with freckles, and bright blue eyes gave her a look the modeling world hadn't seen in years. Instead of simply admiring her appearance, the agency responded with something rare. Maggie Rizer became the first model to be offered a contract based only on photos sent through the mail. No interviews, no test shoots, just pictures. And it worked. Even with that major offer, she didn't rush into modeling. She had already started school at the State University of New York at Geneseo, and also studied at the Rochester Institute of Technology. For a while, she focused on her studies, but the pull of the fashion world grew stronger. She decided to give modeling a real try during one summer break. She made a bold move and dyed her natural strawberry blonde hair a brighter red. That caught the eye of Italian Vogue and their top photographer, Stephen Meisel. After working with him and other big names, she decided to set school aside. The fashion industry opened its doors wide. In September 1997, she landed her first cover and a 20-page couture feature. Then, more covers followed. In April 1999, she appeared on the front of American Vogue alongside Kate Moss. In November 2000, she returned to Vogue again, this time with Carmen Cass, Angela Lindvall, and Frankie Rader. That same year, she was nominated for the VH1 Vogue Model of the Year award. Carmen Cass took home the win, but the nomination alone placed Maggie in the same league as the most powerful faces in fashion. From there, her work only grew. She appeared on the covers of magazines like Elle, Lucky, Vogue, and Flair. Fashion spreads around the world featured her face. Her look became one of the most recognized in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Instead of going to college parties, Maggie found herself living a completely different life. She received invites to grand events at the Versace mansion. She boarded the Concorde so she could squeeze in more jobs across continents. She posed for couture shoots at Versailles. She wandered through antique stores in Biarritz with Karl Lagerfeld, who introduced her to fine French culture and wines. She also gained another experience by stepping briefly into the world of television and film. Maggie had a cameo in season 6 of Sex and the City, appearing in a fashion-themed episode. She showed up in America's Next Top Model, Cycle 2, where she taught contestants how to walk the runway properly. On Stylista, episode 6, she took part in showing what it was like to meet the demands of a top model client. Maggie Rizer was even involved in a scene for the comedy film Zoolander. Though the scene didn't make the final cut, her place in fashion history was secure. From a simple life in Watertown to walking runways across the world, Maggie Rizer's story moved fast. It started with a photo in a small-town mall and led to magazine covers, fashion shows, and high-profile parties. Her career rose during a time when fashion was changing, and her image helped shape that new era. She didn't follow the path she once imagined, but she built something far greater. However, life always has its own way of redirecting one's path. shifting priorities, finding balance. After working for over 10 years in the fashion world, things began to shift for Maggie Rizer in 2004. Her life started moving in a different direction, shaped by personal changes and family events that pushed her to stop and think deeply about everything. Fashion had always been a strange place where things looked beautiful on the surface, but underneath, it often left people feeling confused. It was a world where fantasy mixed with truth, and where it became hard to know who you really were.
I didn't necessarily want to be them, but in a way you kind of fantasize about, what they really are like or who they really are.
As a model, she had started working while still young, but the longer she stayed, the more she saw how fast she had to grow up to keep going. After a while, she knew something had to change. She needed to bring balance into her life. For the next few years, she moved between several cities. She spent time in New York City and also stayed at her family home in northern New York. Newport, Rhode Island gave her another place to relax. Then there was San Francisco, where she lived with the man who would later become her husband. Each place gave her something different, and all of them helped her build a life that felt more steady. During those years, she shifted her focus. Her work no longer came first. Instead, she turned her attention to building a home and raising a family. She gave birth to 2 little boys, both full of life and energy. She stayed close to her friends and took joy in the small things. The days were filled with laughter, messes, and real love. It was a life far from the flashing lights of the runway, but one that gave her what she had been missing for a long time. Still, something inside her began to stir again. After her second son was born, memories of her earlier life started to come back. She began to miss the old energy, the rush of fashion shows, the transformation that came with makeup and styling, the teamwork that went into every photo shoot. She missed the feeling of stepping into character and working with creative people. She missed modeling, and just when that feeling grew strong enough, the right call came in. Work offers started coming again, and the timing couldn't have been better. When she stepped back into the industry, it felt almost like no time had passed. Everything came flooding back, and the welcome she received couldn't have been more warm. She found herself checking photos sometimes, looking to see how her skin looked or if she seemed older. But those worries faded quickly. With today's tools, any flaw could be fixed. More importantly, she understood her job better than ever before. The modeling world had changed, but so had she. At the start of her career, she barely knew how to walk in heels. She didn't understand how to show the clothes to the camera. She often felt unsure because she was still just a kid. The photographers and directors spoke in ways she didn't always grasp, and the pressure made everything harder. Now things felt different. She had grown into the role. She knew what people needed from her. She no longer had to stop and figure things out on set. Even if someone gave her a strange idea like mixing a movie character with a natural storm, she understood it immediately. Much of her strength came from the people she had worked with over the years. She had shared the runway with some of the most respected names in modeling. These women weren't chosen because of perfect measurements. They were hired for who they had become. They brought their own unique energy to every shoot. Maggie felt the same way about herself. Her value wasn't based on numbers. She was hired because of the experience and character she brought with her. Once, after walking in a Michael Kors show, she had a brief talk backstage with someone who reminded her of something important. Finding balance was still key. It was something she had heard from other model moms too. Each person had to figure it out in their own way. For Maggie, it meant putting her children first. Most days, she had little hands tugging at her and dogs climbing over the furniture. Sometimes there was ice cream in her hair or toys scattered across the room. But that was the life she had built, and she loved it. She didn't chase fashion shows across the globe anymore. Her priorities had shifted, but that didn't mean she had to walk away completely. The love for modeling was still there, and she had found a way to hold on to it without letting go of everything else. She had no more confusion about who she was. That part of her life had settled. She was a mother who also happened to love fashion. And for her, that balance finally made everything fall into place. But before now, Maggie had encountered a very big problem. Down the drain, Maggie Rizer had reached the top of the modeling world, but she never tried to erase where she came from. Among the many Eastern European and South American models taking over the runways, Maggie stood out, not just because of her American roots, but because she held onto them so tightly. Watertown, the small town where she grew up, shaped how she moved through success. Even when money started pouring in, she never let it carry her too far from that small town life. Her rise in the industry was fast and impressive. Her name became known across the fashion world, and she was soon earning $20,000 for a single runway show. Her day rate for photo shoots began at $30,000. Over just 5 years, she built up a fortune of $7 million. With that money, she didn't just invest in herself, she bought a $1.6 million condominium in Tribeca, right in the heart of New York. At the same time, she built a cottage by Lake Ontario, close to the water where she had spent so many childhood summers. That place meant something to her, and she brought it back into her life. She also gave back to her family by buying one of the best houses in Watertown for them to live in. Yet, despite being surrounded by luxury, her lifestyle was more restrained than expected. Compared to other supermodels, Maggie lived modestly. She didn't throw her money around or chase extravagant things. She trusted those around her, especially her family. At age 20, she and her mother decided to hire a professional financial manager in New York. The manager would take 5% of Maggie's earnings in return for handling her growing fortune. But that plan faded before it even started. Her stepfather, John Breen, stepped forward and said it was unnecessary. He had worked in the insurance business and claimed he could do it all himself. After much consideration, Maggie let him take over her finances. At first, it seemed like a practical choice, but there was something deeper going on. John had a serious drinking problem. Even though his past struggles with alcohol were known, they didn't raise much concern in the beginning. When he visited New York, he and Maggie sometimes went out for cocktails together. It felt like part of the celebration, especially during special career moments. But what looked like fun in the city didn't reflect what was really happening back in Watertown. In his hometown, John's drinking had taken control of his life. He had started to lose his sense of direction as Maggie's fame grew. On the surface, he kept up the image of a working man, dropping off the kids at school and heading out for the day. But instead of going to the office, he would drive to a local bar. One of his regular spots was the Speakeasy, a bar owned by Watertown's mayor. It was there that he found something that made things even worse. Quick Draw, a fast-paced lottery game with high stakes and non-stop play. Quick Draw worked like a video game. Every 5 minutes, the game started over. A single ticket allowed a $10 maximum bet, but John didn't stop at one. He filled out dozens at a time, often playing 50 tickets in one sitting. He'd spend hours at the bar, drinking vodka and playing over and over again. His bank account couldn't keep up. As the money disappeared, he began to take bigger risks. To avoid getting caught by local bars or facing bad check charges, he began using Maggie's bank account. He wrote checks made out to himself or to cash, always believing he'd pay it back when he finally hit a big win. But unfortunately, the wins didn't come, and the losses kept stacking up. Some weeks, he spent up to $60,000. Each night, he told himself he'd stop. But the next day, he would drive right back to the same bar and start again. He couldn't pull himself out of it. John had a long friendship with the mayor, Jeff Graham, who even appeared in a television special about Maggie in 2000. However, that friendship didn't help matters. The mayor would sometimes call John to let him know about quick draw events at the bar. It only fed the addiction. Over time, John's business fell apart. He stopped going to work altogether. He admitted that even his best week in the insurance business wouldn't make up for what he was losing through gambling. The pressure grew. Notices about unpaid electric bills started showing up at the house of Maggie's mother, Maureen. Instead of admitting the truth, John blamed her for spending too much. But the damage was already done. After he lost all of his own money, he began using Maggie's money even more. On some days, he lost tens of thousands of dollars from her account. And no one in the family knew the full story because John kept it all hidden. The double life continued for a while before everything finally started to break down. What looked like a successful, supportive stepfather on the outside was, in fact, someone spinning out of control. Maggie had worked hard and stayed grounded, but someone she trusted had used that trust to dig himself deeper into addiction. The money she earned with long hours, hard work, and discipline was disappearing through a hole no one could see until it was too late. The missing money mystery. Maureen Brennan had reached her breaking point. Her husband's drinking had taken over their lives, and after struggling with it for too long, she made the hard choice to check him into an alcohol rehab center. While he was away, she went into his office to clean things up and get everything in order. But the trash in the bin caught her eyes. Among crumpled papers and old receipts, there were documents, check stubs, and bank records that didn't look right. One by one, she picked them out and began to lay them on his desk. As she looked through them, a different picture began to show itself. She took her time and slowly pieced the puzzle together. The deeper she dug, the more things came to light. She saw that her husband, John Breen, had been hiding a dark secret. He had taken full control of Maggie's money, every dollar she earned from modeling, and even the inheritance she had received after her biological father, Kevin, passed away from AIDS in 1992. It wasn't just some small mistake. The money had been used up. In January, Maureen called her daughter Maggie from upstate. Her voice sounded heavy, drained by the stress. She let Maggie know that John had started drinking again and had been sent to a treatment center not far from their home. With him away, Maureen had decided to take a look at Maggie's finances. Something didn't add up. There were missing funds and confusing account transfers. Money had been moved around without any clear explanation. Maggie didn't want to believe it at first. She had always seen John as someone who stepped in when she needed support. He had filled a role in her life that had been empty for years. She felt safe around him. She didn't want to see what her mother was describing. It sounded too far-fetched, and she thought maybe her mother was just reacting too strongly, as she sometimes did. Still, Maureen would not let it go. So Maggie gave in and did something she hadn't done in a long time. She called her bank to ask about her accounts. One by one, the calls chipped away at what she believed to be true. The first account had been shut down months ago. Another one had been completely emptied. She moved on to an investment firm where she had mutual funds. They told her the funds had been withdrawn. She called more banks. The same pattern kept showing up. She found out that she had several accounts she hadn't even known about, and all of them had been drained. The money was gone. The more she looked into it, the worse it became. It was like falling into a hole that got deeper with every step. It took weeks to uncover the full damage. Altogether, nearly $7 million had vanished. Everything she had worked for and everything Kevin had left her. It wasn't just a financial loss. It was like someone had pulled the ground from under her. The shock left her numb as she tried to understand how everything could be taken from her without her even noticing. In Watertown, John's behavior hadn't been hidden. People around town knew who he was because of Maggie's fame. They had seen him at local bars, placing bets on games, sometimes 10 in a row. He would go to banks and write checks at the counter, acting like he had nothing to hide. Some believed that Maggie's fame had shielded him. He would chat with bank tellers, going on about where Maggie had traveled and what she was doing next. Then, one afternoon in January 2003, things took another turn. John, drunk and stumbling, showed up at Maggie's cottage. Julia, Maggie's older sister, was home alone. By now, Julia had become a defense attorney, and she had grown into a tougher version of her younger self. John sat down and started drinking vodka mixed with soda. He rambled about things he couldn't explain. He hinted that he was holding onto a secret, said Maureen never cared about him, and even mentioned prison. The next morning, Maureen didn't waste time. She booked him into another rehab facility near Syracuse. But before heading there, John insisted on stopping by his office. Maureen hadn't been inside before. When she walked in, she saw papers thrown everywhere. The place was a mess. Against one wall, there were big black garbage bags stuffed full. John rushed to his desk and filled out a form, sealed it in an envelope, slapped on a stamp, and pushed it into her hands. He told her to mail it, but warned her not to open it. He also demanded that the trash be taken out immediately. There wasn't enough time. They had to get to the clinic. So the next morning, Maureen called a few friends to meet her at the office. Once they started going through the filing cabinets and those garbage bags, everything fell into place. Inside the trash, they found documents that told the whole story. Fake signatures, forged withdrawal forms, early pension cash-outs, penalties from broken investment accounts. She had brought the envelope with her. When she finally opened it, it was another withdrawal slip. She was heartbroken. In 2004, the truth finally caught up with John. He was charged and later found guilty of grand larceny and conspiracy to defraud. His sentence was set, 16 to 48 months in prison. The damage he had caused couldn't be undone, but the lies were no longer hidden. The pieces had been picked up one by one from the mess he left behind, rising back after the fall.
Push yourself to fix what's wrong and really face your fears and fix things, and don't give up on yourself.
After everything that happened with John, Maggie found herself totally lost. She didn't know where to turn or who to trust. Everything she had believed in suddenly felt shaky. She had always believed in taking people as they came. If someone smiled and seemed kind, she accepted them. But John had changed all of that. She had thought he was trustworthy, a good man. Now that image was broken, and with it, her sense of safety. If he could fool her so easily, she started to wonder about everyone else, unsure of who they really were beneath the surface. The shock pushed her into a downward spiral. She lost interest in the things that once made her feel strong. She gave up on exercising, stopped taking care of her health, and began eating whatever she could grab quickly. She turned to greasy pizza and strong cocktails, letting the days blur into each other. She didn't weigh herself anymore. She didn't care. Time passed, and when she finally stood in front of a mirror again, she barely recognized herself. Her face had grown rounder, and she had gained weight. In the modeling world, it was enough to knock her down. She went from a size 2 to a size 6, and in her industry, that meant the doors started to close. Her modeling agency had changed. She had moved from Ford to IMG, hoping for a fresh start. But instead of support, she felt the pullback. They stopped putting her forward for major opportunities. Instead, they brought her in for jobs that didn't push her image. The agency told her it might be better if she stepped away for a while. At some point, Maggie was told to take therapy. It was as if someone had turned off the tap. Her success, her name, and even her fortune were slipping away. Everything that had come so quickly was now fading just as fast. She didn't even fight it. She let it happen. Somewhere deep down, she didn't know if it had ever truly been hers to begin with. Through it all, she kept pretending things were fine. But people around her started to see through the act. During Easter, in April 2004, she visited home. She took a taxi to her sister's place. But what should have been a family moment turned into conflict. Julia couldn't understand how Maggie was reacting. She didn't see anger. She didn't see action. Julia wanted her to get back on her feet, to shake herself out of the mess. They argued. Maggie left and found herself locked out of the house. She had to wake her mother to let her in. Her mother had no idea Maggie had been up the entire night, pacing through her thoughts. Since both of them were now awake, Maureen offered her something she thought might help, a drink. But that moment made things worse. It pushed Maggie to a place she hadn't reached before. She felt like she had hit bottom. While Maggie was trying to hold herself together, John was facing what came next. Just a week before his sentencing, he sat alone in the house he had once shared with Maureen. He wasn't alone, though. His stray dog, Walter, stayed close by. In another room, a weight bench sat unused. He had been working out, trying to build himself up before prison life began. Even after everything, John claimed his feelings for Maggie and Julia hadn't changed. He believed he still cared about them. He spoke as if he hadn't accepted reality, like he was waiting to wake up from a terrible dream. But his actions had been real, and the damage was done. He admitted that alcohol and gambling had taken control of him. He said he was trying to recover, trying to find a way back. But his dreams, even now, were filled with anger. He would wake up full of rage, blaming the world around him. Maureen had her own reasons to be angry. She and the children she had with John had ended up needing public assistance. They had to face the shame and hardship that came with that. She couldn't understand why Maggie didn't feel the same level of anger. She wanted her daughter to be furious, to show the fire that she herself felt. But Maggie's feelings were more complicated. She didn't see John as evil. She believed he had made one bad decision after another, until he had backed himself into a corner. She felt he had taken the wrong road again and again. She believed he wasn't beyond repair, just deeply troubled. Maggie had written a letter to the court asking for a chance for him. She wanted him to do better, to see his life as something worth saving. She hoped that being in prison might help him see what he had lost. She didn't want him to waste what was left of his life. She wanted him to learn, to understand, and to hold on to the chance to change. Through all the pain, Maggie had stayed soft toward the man who had ruined so much. She hadn't fought to climb back up right away. She had drifted, struggled, and stumbled through her emotions. Everything around her had shifted, and she had to figure out how to stay standing while the world she knew kept changing. What are your thoughts on Maggie's reaction to the damage caused by her stepfather's actions? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.